Welcome into an all-new betting preview for this week's Wyndham Championship. I'm Rick Game, and that right there, Andy Lack. Andy, good day to you.
Good morning. Yeah, regular season FedEx Cup or regular season finale, FedEx Cup playoffs right on the horizon. Couple interesting narratives and storylines to track on this final week of the season. Couple big names that need to make some noise this week. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's dive right on into the betting board. This is the odds checker grid, so you can compare the prices across the industry here. And there is, at this moment, best available odds, no golfer sub 20 to 1. Four-way co-favorites. Again, best available odds. Hideki Matsuyama, Russell Henley, Siwoo Kim, Sungjae Im, all 20 to 1, Andy. Already kind of the composition of this betting board, unlike what we've seen for the vast majority of the year.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was a little surprised that I thought that judging based on how odds have been over the last couple of weeks, they were going to put like Hideki, Sungjae, and Burns all at 14 to 16 to 1 and make us choose. I think these are probably a little bit closer to what I would hope still exists as fair prices these days, with, a couple of these guys starting at the 20s, which is something it feels like we haven't seen for a while. I bet Hideki at 20 to 1. I just think that this is a pretty ideal spot for him in terms of what he does well. He's an incredibly accurate driver of the golf ball. He's due for a win. It's been nearly 2 years since his last win came at Waialae, which is another golf course that asks pretty similar questions of what you have to do.
Ago? Oh my God.
Yeah, second event of 2022.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
So he won the Masters in 2021, the Zozo in the fall of 2021, and Waialae in January of 2022, and nothing since for Hideki. Which is surprising given his caliber of play. I mean, he's remained, I have him as pound for pound the best iron player in this world by, still a fairly healthy margin. And his ball striking still looked rock solid this year as well. He had a couple like really incredible approach rounds at the 3M as well. So I actually think that you're getting somewhat of a decent price on Hideki this week.
Yeah, that's the one I kind of thought you would go for. And I tend to agree with you. The other conversation is going to be around Russell Henley, but he's going to be, very popular in some of the DFS and other game theory markets. But I think if you line up Hideki and Russell Henley at literally the same odds, 20 to 1, what we're looking at right now, it would be hard to take Russell Henley despite how good he's been, the way he sets up for this golf course. I think like you kind of believe that Hideki's in a bit of a different class.
I do as well. And even a guy like Sungjae, who I've been, I would say, tentatively interested in this week, at least for DFS purposes as well. And I was pretty disappointed because I liked him at the 3M as well. I mean, his ball striking has looked kind of just okay, but that Sungjae that we saw at the beginning of the season where he was finishing top 25 in like 7-8 starts in a row, the consistency is not there for me to believe that this is a guy that should be priced at 20 to 1 with somebody like Hideki. I think you could probably say similar things about Denny McCarthy and Siwoo. I actually have a Denny question for you. Have you taken a gander yet at his ball striking numbers from the Open Championship?
Yeah, well, I know that he lost like 7 approach.
Like 11 strokes ball striking. Do you value that at all, or is it just a throwaway?
Do not care. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that so I'll pull up his profile here. I think when you get a guy who plays, such a PGA Tour centric schedule, goes to Royal Liverpool and gets their butt kicked, like I just do not care about that at all. Similar story for Doug Ghim. Right. Doug Ghim, he was playing great. Not as good as Denny, but he's playing great. He goes to the Scottish Open, gets his butt kicked, comes back, and immediately picks up right where he left off. I just think it is. I think that was his first major championship for Denny, wasn't it? Or first Open. First Open, excuse me. So
I believe it was his first Open. He's played in. He was good at Oak Hill this year.
He played well at LICC as well. Yeah. So I like do not care about that at all. And that's kind of across the board. If you went overseas and you got your butt kicked at either the Scottish or the Open, I pretty much don't care.
Do you think that there's anything that Denny could do this week to make the Ryder Cup team?
Win?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Not,
probably it.
yeah.
And I still think that would be, it's not a lock because you might get some of these guys that go on a run in the playoffs, right? And you might like what happens if Finau wins a playoff event, right? Like that would throw another wrench into things for Zach Johnson. So I think it would have to be win, and that is no guarantee that would get him on the team.
If Sam Burns wins, is he on the team?
That's another one too, right? I mean,
right? Yeah,
he's won the match play. He carried Scotty Scheffler at the President's Cup. The record does not reflect how well he played at the President's Cup. And I think in those formats, I would much prefer the 18-hole upside over like the 72-hole consistency, right? So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of guys like this U.S. team is not set and could be spoiled by some of these guys who might have had to been captain's picks in the past, earning their way onto the team because it's based on money, and there's $3.6 million coming up the next 2 weeks, each of the next 2 weeks. Like this team could look very different in just a handful of weeks.
Right. Not to get us too sidetracked, because I'm sure we'll do a ton of Ryder Cup stuff in the upcoming weeks as well. But in terms of like the guys that need to play their way in this week for FedEx Cup purposes, would you say that you have the most confidence in Horschel, JT, Lowry? Is Adam Scott on the outside looking in as well?
Last I checked, Adam Scott's interesting because he had a runner-up finish here last year or 2 years ago. I think he was in that big playoff. That's kind of interesting. I think Lowry has a pretty good chance of getting in. I think JT's kind of lost, and Billy Horschel has had he's been great around here, but like that one good week, I'm not sure that's necessarily enough. I worry that those guys will not play well this week.
Yeah, just the obligatory JT question that I want to ask every week before we get to the next range. Is there a number this week where you're saying, does what happened at the 3M Open, which was another disappointing miscut, a valiant effort, I would say, I guess, on the back nine, but still, hard to take away too many positives from that. The off the tee, I guess, looked okay, but he's lost strokes on approach in 4 straight starts now.
Yep.
You could probably check this faster than me. I don't think that's happened since his rookie year. I don't think that's happened in a decade.
And not only has it not happened, so the last time he did it was 2014. He had a run. Yeah. From the end of 2013 into Shriners of 24. I mean, that was only, he wasn't even a full-time no. yet, right?
He was 20. What? He was 20 years old.
Yeah. This hasn't happened since start number 4 in his career on the PGA Tour. That's how long it's been. So I mean, let's think about this logically. I think last week I said 50 was the number. This is a statistically slightly better field. 55, right? I mean, what I have seen for the last 6 months is not great. What I saw at the 3M, and I've told this story a couple times. I mean, he was standing over 3.5 foot putts for an eternity. And it looks bad. The stats look bad. The eye test looks bad. I think for JT's long-term stuff, I kind of hope he just miss the playoffs, man. Don't go on a playoff run, reset, take 6 or 7 weeks off or whatever it is. I'll bet you your first week back, because I trust the process that you'll be able to get this figured out, but I just cannot find a scenario in which I'm investing my United States currency on him this week.
I think he's going to make the cut this week based on sheer willpower. But I have no interest in him on his current betting number. I mean, who's betting this guy at 35-1 still at this point? That surprises me, because, they have to be taking some action on that number for it not to drift even further. But him still being in the 30s, even in a field like this, very much surprises me. And even, Adam Scott and Shane Lowry are 2 guys that haven't really done a lot of sniffing of contention this year either.
No. They haven't. So that's kind of that next tier there. Sam Burns, 25-1. He leads it off. Poston, Lowry, Justin Thomas, Aaron Rye, Adam Scott, Alex Smalley, all kind of just thrown in to this next tier. So if you've got a bet on Hideki, have you made one here?
I have. Aaron Rye. I'm a huge fan of Aaron Rye this week. I bet him at 45. I see him as low in some places as 33. I mean, I like him. I certainly like that less than the 45, but 40 is pretty fine for me as well. Rye is, probably one of the most accurate drivers of the ball on the PGA Tour.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy hits like 75% of his fairways. It's absurd. And if you look at the ball striking numbers, which you have pulled up right now on Rick Run Good, when we're talking about outright betting, you want to look far more at spike ball striking performances than you do at overall consistency, right? It's a different conversation than DraftKings, where you're looking for guys with a high made cut percentage. You look at Aaron Ryan, there's been 7 or so times this season where he's probably hit the ball well enough to win a golf tournament. Right. And you're not saying that about Brendan Todd. You're not saying that about Matt Kuchar. You're not saying about some of the guys that are even priced in the same range as him. Right. So, yes, he hasn't been able to marry the great putting week with the great ball striking week, but at least he has those great ball striking weeks in his bag. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in the outright betting market. So, Rye's my winner this week. I'm pretty dark. I'm about as high as you can be on a 45-1 guy.
Yeah, I was actually hoping, and the first ownership projections for RickRunGood.com just came in like 30 minutes ago. So I haven't had a chance to dive too deep into them, but I was hoping everybody was going to roster Denny and leaving Aaron Rye just kind of untouched. Now, they're not expensive enough where you can only get one of them, but I agree with you, right? He never misses a fairway. When he does, it's by a very small margin. You talk about the ball striking upside to win. I mean, 3 times in his last 6 starts, he's hit it well enough to win. And, the results are there. The top 10 finishes are there. So he doesn't even, we see some guys who have these spike weeks and then they, it gets spoiled and it's like a T23 finish. It's like, well, I didn't get anything out of that. He has actually been in contention a handful of times just in recent memory.
Certainly. And a couple more guys I want to ask you about in this range. Smallies getting a lot of love. That was, shout out Duke. That was a guy that was opened at 60-1. And now it looks like his market is all the way down to 40. Are you a big Smalley guy this week? He's already down to 35.
Yeah.
Spots. That feels a bit ambitious.
I feel like I've missed the boat a little bit here on 35, but I think he's actually a really good example of someone who was playing well when overseas, got his butt kicked, and I don't care about it. Like that type of deal. Right now, he's going to come home. Like when he's the first round leader, you're going to hear, oh my gosh, 54 miles away, Greensboro to Duke, right? Like you're going to hear all of that coming from.
They're not that close. I mean, I'm Mr. Police when it comes to how liberal we are about the home game stuff. Yeah, Greensboro and Durham are a healthy 3 hours away.
Well, I think I've kind of missed the boat there. So pretty bullish longer term on Smalley. I'm not going to bet him at 35 or 40-1. I've actually, so where I'm at here is I have not touched the top of the board yet. I have a Rye number sitting out there that I'll get to. I like that as well. But then you get into some of these guys who, like Steven Yeager's low-key been really good. He's at 45-1. Does he have the upside to win this golf tournament? I don't know the answer to that. JJ Spawn can keep it in play 50-1. Can he win this golf tournament? Can Eric Cole hit it straight enough at 66? Like I just getting as it makes sense, just like increasingly more questions as we go down the list.
I mean, I still think there's some great options in the 50th range. I thought Adam Hadwin would be a little bit lower. And I think it's I guess somewhat decent buy low spot for him coming off a miscut at the 3M where he was fairly disappointing to myself and many others, I would imagine, but the driver still looked good for him. It was actually good to see him get his driver back on track after a couple poor off the tee weeks, but he seems like a guy that should be able to have a lot of success on a golf course like Sedgefield. I mean, he's already got a 10th place finish here in the past. He's had some pretty solid success at other kind of shorter positional golf courses like TPC Sawgrass, Innisbrook, very similar agronomy, southeastern United States, very Carolina golf course in its nature. It's another golf course that Adam Hadwin's won at. So I would say him at 50 and Chris Kirk at 50 as well, which I was having this conversation with our mutual friend, Jeff Feinberg, the other day about how, you can get a lot of the Denny lights at double the price. I'm not even sure. I mean, Chris Kirk's won like 6 times on the PGA Tour. Like, are we sure that Denny's even better than Chris Kirk? I think
Denny
50 to 1.
Love that career, right? Denny would love to have Chris Kirk.
Right. Denny's kind of the Chris Kirk light, actually, in my opinion. So I actually think the 50 is a touch disrespectful to Kirk, a guy who's won this year on a Bermuda golf course already and does have 2 top 25s in his last 4 starts. I think 50 is a pretty fair number on Kirk.
The thing that has me staring at Eric Cole's name is he's like a pretty prolific birdie maker on tour. I think he's 21st on tour, which in this field, he's probably like 8th, right? Something like that. But I am terrified of this, Andy, where he is short and crooked off the tee, which I don't care so much about the short, especially this week, but short and crooked is like the worst thing you can be on the PGA Tour.
Cole has carved out a role for himself as probably having one of the biggest deltas right now between his off the tee play and his approach play, which I always find interesting because you would think that there is some crossover and relation between the way that you drive the ball and the way that you hit your irons, right? They're both
full swings with long clubs. He's
right.
He's very good with like the medium ones, but like not good with the super long one.
Right. So that's one of the more fascinating deltas in my opinion. And it's a stay away for me right now as well. I understand the love based on the iron play, but Sedgefield is a golf course where hitting the fairway is incredibly important. I mean, it ranks 4th out of 38 courses on the PGA Tour in missed fairway penalty, right? Bermuda rough, in my experience and opinion, is a lot more challenging to control spin out of than the bluegrass rough that we see pretty often on bentgrass courses. So I always tend to favor driving accuracy just in general more on Bermuda golf courses. And I'm with you. I have some pretty valid concerns about Cole off the tee right now.
There's a good chance that I have an Aaron Rye 40 and then 3 80s to start my card. Gim, Glover, Hubbard. Talked a little bit about Gim already. Glover's miscut last week was about as good of a miscut as you can get. And Hubbard, I will give one more crack to at a golf course like this. Like we talked about, shorter positional lean. Both of those guys missed the cut. Hubbard and Glover did. I will forgive quickly one time and try to see if I can find a dart further down the board.
And this is a golf tournament. In the past, it's been pretty kind to some of your long shot winners. Herman had to be in the 300 zone as well.
God, he was as long as 500 in some places. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what was Siwoo when he won this? Was he? I can't remember. Siwoo's the guy who you, depending on week and year, could have been 25 to 1 or 250 to 1, right? I mean, the guy's been all over the yard.
Right. Because he won the Wyndham after he won the Players, correct? And I think the days of 500 to 1 on Siwoo probably ended at the Players. And I'm pretty sure he was 300 or 500 to 1 at the Players.
Well, hold on. He won the Players in 17 and he won the Wyndham in 16.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow, that's surprising.
He didn't the Wyndham was his first PGA Tour win.
And he's been excellent at the golf course since. I mean, he's got a number of high-end finishes, but to get you back on the path of Glover, I mean, this is a guy that everyone was pretty enamored with just a week or two ago, and he did what Lucas Glover is going to do, which is the guy's not going to putt well every week. That's just the nature of Lucas Glover. So I do agree with you that this is a fairly intriguing buy low spot for him, bounce back spot for him. I'm probably more intrigued on him from a DraftKings standpoint than I am an outright betting standpoint. But what do you think about, just out of curiosity, do you think that Webb is priced fairly right now?
So I've got him at 90 to 1.
Yeah.
No. I think he should be longer than that.
Yeah, me too. I think so too. But
I mean, he's in semi-retirement. I mean, that's a fact. And the game has not been good for 2 years, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I get, oh man, well, he's going to show up at this place and all of a sudden gain 8.5 strokes on approach. I'd be very surprised by that. Right.
It's never a good sign when you let your caddy walk for greener pastures at 37 years old, right? Like Webb's not 43. Webb's not in the 45
this is
to
like
50
a ton of guys.
Yeah, right. Webb is younger. Yeah, Webb's not in. Webb's like 2 years older than Rory. So this isn't the dead zone that we see players fall into between 45 and 50, where it's like, just get me to the Champions Tour. Webb's 8 years away from that. So it might be a long 8 years for him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be longer than that. A guy that I am far more interested in that zone of 90-ish to 1 is Brandon Wu, actually. Okay. Wu finished 8th at this tournament last year. He hit the ball really well last week in Minnesota. It's another guy I played high school golf with. He went on to have a pretty excellent career at Stanford as well. Yeah, you see he's got that 8th place finish at the Wyndham last year where he gained strokes in all 4 major categories, over 2 on approach and 2 off the tee. Did the same thing in Minnesota, where he was consistent off the tee and on approach, gaining over 2 in both of those. Has a couple high-end finishes. Like, he's been in the heat of the battle in PGA Tour events and fields that are not that dissimilar from this one. He's contended in Mexico on multiple times. You see he's got that 2nd place finish at Pebble Beach. It's another shorter positional golf course. So I would say my favorite bet by a healthy margin is Wu when it comes to guys over 60 or 70.
There was a question about Garrick Higa, and because we're in this part of the board 90 to 1, I buy Garrick long term. The split with Claude Harmon's been great for him. He's driving it well. He's back to kind of improving finishes every week. I think this is probably one of the worst spots on tour for him. So I don't think I can invest in him this week, but longer term, I'm in on. Before we move along, anybody real deep? I mean, we're past the 100 to 1 mark. That is worth a click.
I'll say Zach Blair is probably should be shorter than 300. I don't know if the 300 still exists, but this was a guy that I expected to be 150. Yeah, that's a bit disrespectful to me for Zach Blair. He walked up his PGA Tour card with the top 15 in Minnesota. So maybe he doesn't have quite the motivation to go get it this week, but 2nd at the Travelers, that's another shorter positional golf course that's asking similar questions of what you're going to see at Sedgefield. A couple really strong finishes at the Sony Open. I think he's won the Sony Open before as well, if memory serves correctly. So the only guy I would say is Blair should be probably closer to 100 than 300 if you're hounding for some value at the bottom.
Okay. The outright market's pretty interesting. The matchup market. Siwoo is a pretty sizable favorite over Ludwig Aberg, -150. I guess that makes a little bit of sense. Bo Hostler has kind of injected himself into the conversation thanks to that low round on Sunday from last week. Keith Mitchell withdrew, so just ignore that Cam Davis, Keith Mitchell matchup. And then this is kind of interesting, right? Sung Jae and Sam Burns here. Burns is a dog, and that feels a little hairy to me, right? I mean, I'm quite low on Sung Jae this week, all things considered, right? And Burns has a lot to play for. We've seen him get hot at times. I think him being +120 is a little off.
I'd agree with that. That feels a little steep for my liking as well. Burns just has a lot of upside. He misses a lot more cuts than
Sung Jae's missed like 5 of 9.
Has he really? I kind of thought of him as more consistent than that, but you're right. He's been a little bit more volatile recently. What do you think about this JT Ludwig one? That kind of has my brain in a pretzel. I'm a lot lower, it appears, on Ludwig than market, and that's not even a shot at Ludwig. I think Ludwig's awesome. Yeah. I think that he should be on the Ryder Cup team. I just think he is, I think he's become overrated before even having the ability to carve out who he is, based on guys being just wanting to hit the next thing so badly. But
The problem I would have with this matchup specifically is Aberg is like, he's like long and straight, right? He can kind of do both, but I wonder if Sedgefield will, like, I can't imagine he's hitting a ton of drivers around this place. I think there are better courses for him to separate himself. The other problem is he has a very low floor. You know, you might see him shoot 63, 73 back-to-back rounds, right? And he's kind of doing that consistently. And the problem is, if he has one of those bad rounds on Thursday or Friday, he gone. Like, he's not going to be around for the weekend. I don't know if JT's floor is significantly higher at this point, but that would be pretty scary for me to get Aberg in a matchup, just because of how, I mean, he's literally capable of losing 5 strokes to the field in a single round. Now he's capable of gaining 6, but that worries me in this format.
Ludwig is like the worst thing that's ever happened at golf Twitter, because the delta between his good rounds and his bad rounds is so stark. So what happens with Ludwig is he'll shoot like a first round 63 and all the Ludwig guys will go nuts. And then he'll drop like 70 spots on the leaderboard. And then the following tournament, he'll open with a 74 and everybody will stick a fork in him. And then he'll shoot 63 in the final round. Moral of the story, like, just never have a take on Ludwig until the tournament is over. He, on any given day, can move up. He's probably the most, like, he has the belt for me as the most likely on any given day. I'm curious if there's any other good contenders or nominees for this, but the most likely player to move up 50 or move down 50 spots on a leaderboard any given day. I think Ludwig's got the belt for me right now.
I think it's nice of him. He gives both sides what they want, right?
Right.
The victory lap him, which is great. Just mere hours apart. So
often in the same tournament. Yeah. I've seen the Ludwig haters win in the same tournament, and the Ludwig winners love in the same, win in the same tournament as well.
Doesn't matter. All right, we're going to continue this conversation on the other side. We've got to do our one and done selections and strategy conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about this tiers contest that I think Andy and I cashed in last week. I don't know if he knows about that yet. See you on the other side.
Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
Okay, Andy, before we jump into the outright market, last week you and I filled out an entry on Splash, and I believe it was the one that cashed for us. So I think we should do it again here. 6 different tiers. There's a RickRunGood contest right now. It'll fill probably here by the end of the day. Link in the description if you want to get involved. Tier 1, Sam Burns, Sung J M, Hideki, Denny, Russell Henley, Adam Scott. Henley and McCarthy will both be quite popular.
I would go Hideki. Do you want to make each tier collaborative, or do you want to go switch off? You pick one, I pick one.
Let's do it collaboratively.
Okay.
I agree that Hideki is the play here.
Okay, let's go Hideki.
Because I think everybody's going to gobble up Denny and Henley, and you're going to get basically the guy who is or should be the favorite with at least the 3rd level of ownership, which I like. Tier 2, Lowry, Siwoo, Poston, Putnam, Eric Cole, Aaron Rye. I have a feeling we both want Rye.
I would choose Rye. I mean, I'm okay with Siwoo. If you have a strong Siwoo and Poston are priced higher than him, I would go Rye, because I think Siwoo and Poston, there's still some game theory involved here with this, right?
There's 100 entries, so you got to be a little bit, and people are, like watching what we're talking about right now, so we got to be a little bit.
Let's go Rye.
Yeah, a little bit different. Tier 3, Chris Kirk, Adam Schenk, who's been low-key real good, Alex Noren, Patrick Rogers, Benny On, Steven Yeager. Ooh.
I would say that I am okay with either Kirk or Yeager, if you have a strong opinion on that.
I would probably prefer Yeager.
Okay, let's do that. Unless you feel adamantly about Schenk.
I don't. But I will say, if you go look up his stat profile, it's probably better than most people think it is. And it's like way more top 10s than people would think. That's all I'll say about it. I don't think he's like a super lock. I don't think this is a great course for him, but like I think that's the key. Tier 4 is Taylor Moore, Adam Hadwin, Brendan Todd, JJ Spawn, Mark Hubbard, Bo Hostler. I don't really care.
Hadwin's the clear choice for me.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think the short list for me would have been Hadwin or Hubbard. I don't see them as a huge difference. Tier 5. Okay. JT, Harris English, Cam Davis, Alex Smalley, Gary Woodland, Thomas Dietrich, and the man himself, Ludwig Aberg.
Interesting. I'd probably go Cam Davis, but
I don't mind that at all.
Who would be your?
I think Smalley's like the safest one, but I think he's going to be the most popular. I don't want to get involved in Justin Thomas. Davis has been. I mean, he played well again last week, and I'm not sure anybody even noticed it. I do not want Gary Woodland. I don't need to be involved in Aberg. I'm cool with Cam Davis.
Let's do Davis.
All right, last one. Bezaden Hote, Nikolai Højgaard, Kevin Streelman, Ben Griffin, Sam Stevens, Dylan Wu, Nicholas Lindheim.
So do you subscribe to this betting price spells really funny? So where there's smoke, there's fire theory, with Lindheim being like 100-1, despite, many people, including myself, not really knowing much about him.
I'm definitely on the like higher side of Lindheim.
Lindheim's like 80-1.
Yeah.
This week.
I don't think he should be like, yeah. If I'm not even sure he should be that short, but since he's come back from the back injury, he's only played 5 times in 5 months or something like that. One of them was a win 2 weeks ago. It's all Corn Ferry stuff, and he's been great. It is definitely like a small sample size issue, but I mean, has anybody else in this tier had a better 5 tournament stretch than Lindheim, even if they are all Corn Ferry Tour events? Streelman just had a good finish, but
yeah, certainly not. I probably don't have much interest in Dylan Wu coming off a
the best putting week of the year.
Right.
No, thank you.
I'd make a case for Ben Griffin.
Okay.
But I could also be talked into Streelman.
I'm kind of a Ben Griffin guy.
Yeah.
He's gained on approach in like 9 straight. He's generally very good in the short game categories. He won't kill you off the tee. Let's do Ben Griffin.
Let's do Ben Griffin.
I
like that.
That gives us Hideki, Aaron Rye, Yeager, Hadwin, Davis, Griffin. If you think you can beat that, the link is in the description. You can go get involved right now. A little bit of a more top heavy payout this week as I kind of just see what's going on. One and done. The final, I think it's $1.3 million for the winner this week, then 3.6 next week, 3.6 the following week. So no surprise about who the most popular selections are, Andy, right now. 16% JT Poston, 13% Siwoo Kim, Russell Henley, the only other one above 10%. What's the strategy here? If you're out front, one of those 3, Poston, Siwoo, Russell.
Yeah, if you're out front, I mean, I am at the point where I need, I would say a lot of people probably that are trailing. Now you like, not only do you need a win, but you need a win that jumps a lot of people. Yeah. Like for our personal one, I'm going a little bit more farther down the board than I would normally. Okay. Back to our personal one for a second, because I was, it's such a frustrating position picking second, because the person who's trailing should pick second. Like, I'm not disagreeing with the concept behind it, right? Because if you got to pick second, then you could effectively just choose the guy that I did every single week and never lose. But I don't know if you would do that in the spirit of the game.
I wouldn't, because it'd be horrible for content. But
correct.
That is the reason that we do this, is right. The leader going second could effectively just box out the other person the entire time.
I know. I think I'm just bitter that Grio was my guy and you picked him. And so I had to pivot. And then Grio
is nothing.
You're right. It's nothing, but I need everything that I can get. this week. So although the FedEx Cup playoffs are a lot of money, have we decided that we're, obviously I am pro, including Eastlake, but
how would we do it? How would we do the payout?
Because
there's not like official money. It's just bonuses there.
Sure.
We can think about it.
Yeah, we can ponder it and come back to it. I mean, we should probably decide it sooner than the week of.
Yeah, we'll but between now and next week, we'll figure it out.
Sure. So again, this isn't a big prize pool. It's really the next 2 weeks are the ones that I need to hit to catch you.
Yes, for sure. Right. If you are chasing and like Andy said, getting somebody who is further down the board with a chance to win, Hadwin's like less than 1%. Is he the guy?
Hadwin, yeah, even Smalley is 1.4. I really like Chris Kirk this week, so it's him at 0.6 is fairly intriguing to me as well.
All right. Well, for our purposes, I'm kind of an autopilot here. Russell Henley is the selection. I have already used Hideki. I have already used Sung Jae. I know that you already used Hideki, so that made me feel a little bit better. You've already used Siwoo Kim, which made me feel a little bit better. So I will just roll out one of the co-favorites. In this case, his name is Russell Henley.
I'm going to ride with Aaron Rye. I think this is his week. And I like him for larger field ones as well, because I don't think he'll be highly owned. And he's my guy this week. We're rocking with Rye. Fairways and greens. Let's do it.
Fairways and greens will generally very good strategy around here. All right. That'll do it. We will chat and figure out a plan in regards to the Tour Championship for One and Done. Follow Andy on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's Wyndham Championship. Good luck.